Yes,
Thank you.
I've got it. Okay, here we are. Good morning, everybody. This morning, the scripture is found in 2 Corinthians chapter 8, verses 7 to 15. I kind of like the New Living Translation version of this, so that's what I'm going to read. You know, Paul is talking to the faithful community around Corinth, talking about all the good things they've done in the last year, and how they can, in fact, share their gifts with each other. I really like this because it talks about not being Paul is saying it's okay not to give things away that you don't have to give. That makes a lot of sense to me as a volunteer. So here we are. This is 2 Corinthians chapter 8, verses 7 to 15. And I'm reading from the New Living Translation.
New Living.
Since you excel in so many ways, in your faith, your gifted speakers, your knowledge, your enthusiasm, and your love from us, I want you to excel also in this gracious act of giving. I'm not commanding you to do this, but I am testing how genuine your love is by comparing it with the eagerness of the other churches. You know the generous grace of our Lord Jesus Christ. Though he was rich, yet for your sakes he became poor, so that by his poverty he could make you rich. Here is my advice. It would be good for you to finish what you started a year ago. Last year, you were the first who wanted to give, and you were the first to begin doing it. Now you should finish what you started. Let the eagerness you showed in the beginning be matched now by your giving. Give in proportion to what you have. Whatever you give is acceptable if you give it eagerly. And give according to what you have, not what you don't have. Of course, I don't mean your giving should make life easy for others and hard for yourselves. I only mean that there should be some equality. Right now, you have plenty and can help those who are in need. Later, they will have plenty and can share with you when you need it. In this way, things will all be equal. As the scriptures say, those who gather a lot had nothing left over, and those who gathered only a little had enough. This is the wisdom of God.
Thanks be to God. Before I get started, I wanted to add a couple of prayers that we missed. This is from Mark, prayers for my niece, Jennifer, whose husband, Danny, passed from COVID last year. It would have been their 28th anniversary this weekend. I'm sorry to hear that, Mark. And Marilyn Donahue, Mike, Emma, and I will be flying back to Oklahoma July 4 through 13 for a celebration of life of a mother. I'm so glad to hear that, who passed in February. By traveling there to facilitate. So thankful my siblings, other family, and friends will be able to be there. I'm thankful for that too, Marilyn. Thank you. Well, did you hear President Biden when he went to Europe? He said, America is back. America is back. We're going to take seriously our relationships, take our allies seriously. I felt so good about this. No more of that conceited America first stuff. Once again, we will be defending democracy here and around the world. We will return to our ideals. I celebrate all of this, but I learned a little bit about thinking when I went through college, and one of the things I always look at is what I call critical hesitancy, to think about things. All issues are complex, and if you have just one part of it, you're never going to know it. There are always assumptions. There are avowed reasons and actual reasons. And a lot of times the people don't even know what the actual reasons are. You always have to curve back and check your own biases, and assumptions and questions are not meant to solicit answers, but better questions. The question here about getting back is very similar to getting back to normal that people express once in a while. But my understanding of normal was not an ideal place. Before the pandemic, we didn't wear masks, but we had psychological masks. We're already social distancing from many people, the people who are different than we are. We didn't wash our hands all the time, but we are washing our hands of things all the time. Construction has begun in the Capitol Rotunda to have a large circular hand washing station. Originally, the purpose of this was for COVID-19 because you have to wash your hands all the time. Now it is there to allow lawmakers to wash their hands of everything before they go see the lobbyists. Call it pilots well. And so also, Congress is back, can you believe it, back to functioning just like they did before. Win or die, zero-sum game. There's always a quid pro quo everywhere. We're back to Senate rules, the filibuster, laws that have allowed and will continue to allow the rich to get richer and the poor to get back poorer. And is that what we're getting back to? I wonder. In the text, Paul is bickering again with the more affluent Corinthians. The subject is an offering that was collected from all the wealthy churches up in the Mediterranean to be given to the poor churches back in Palestine. The text from the lectionary is only a part of Paul's argument. In a paragraph that precedes the texts that we have for this morning, Paul praises the neighboring Macedonians for their generous response to the offering. He says, "We want you to know, brothers and sisters, about the grace of God that has been granted to the churches in Macedonia, for during a severe ordeal of affliction, their abundant joy and their extreme poverty have overflowed in a wealth of generosity on their part. For as I can testify, they voluntarily gave according to their means, and even beyond their means, begging us earnestly for the privilege of sharing in this ministry." What we have here, I would call biblical economics. Paul is saying to the Corinthians, look at the Macedonians. They have less than you do, and they're giving more than you do. Step up, Corinthians. This is a dressing down, however, a little bit politely, because the Corinthians still are wealthy and then therefore have power. Paul is dressing them down. Listen again to what Paul says. It is appropriate for you who began last year not only to do something, but even to desire to do something now. Finish what you're doing. It's a question of fair balance between your present abundance and their need. Pay your pledge, for goodness sake, Corinthians. Fair balance. There you go. How does that fit in our world? I don't think fair balance is one of the ideals of capitalism. Do you? The greatest danger to democracy in America and the world is not the autocrats. It's not Putin. It's not Xi. It's not Trump. What creates autocrats? The disparity of wealth creates autocrats. Populism arises out of poverty. It springs from people who feel that they are not getting attention or being treated fairly, and they look and imagine that there's nothing that will ever change that they can do by themselves. Powerful persons become attractive. And ironically, as rich as Donald Trump is, he took advantage of the feelings of despair amongst many Americans. And that despair is related to the division of wealth. We all know the statistics about this, don't we? All you have to do is go online and you can do this for yourself. Billionaires' wealth is skyrocketing in recent years, and even more so during the pandemic. The richest Americans are 21 times more wealthy than they were in 1982. I wish I could say that. Bill Gates, Jeff Bezos, and Warren Buffett have considerably more wealth than the bottom 50% of Americans. Since 1950, the tax share of the wealthy has dropped precipitously. 1950s, the highest tax rate was 90%. Since most wealthy gain capital not through income, but through investments in stock, which are taxed at 15%, by percentage, the wealthy are paying about half of what you and I do. We are also more giving than the wealthy are. The 10 richest Americans gave 0.094%. Did you hear that? Only Bill Gates, Warren Buffett, and Michael Bloomberg paid more than 1% in charity. And get this, Jeff Bezos claimed a $4,000 tax credit on his taxes, which he was allowed. If I had $180 billion, that's all I'll say. The middle class is disappearing slowly, and wealth disparity is creating another restrictive divide in America between those who have money and those who don't, those who invest in stocks and those who don't. Speaking of stocks, the richest 1% own 50% of all all stocks in America, which means that my personal investment in the stocks and what I do with it is of no significance. The only thing really matters at Wall Street is what the rich are doing. They're in control. With this kind of disparity in wealth, with such a high percentage of our wealth is in the hands of such a small number, we really can't claim democracy, especially after Citizens United. We are a plutocracy, rule of the wealthy. To put it more poignantly, government of the wealthy, for, by the wealthy, and for the wealthy. This has been a recipe of disaster since 1980, and we're facing our comeuppance. Wealth disparity has created an environment in which a person like Donald Trump can be elected as president. Historically, empires implode and they don't explode. They collapse upon themselves rather than an outside source. All they need is themselves to meet the demise of the empire. The rich are really, really rich, have lots of power, and they become entitled and uncaring. Meanwhile, the poor suffer and therefore rebel. It's hard to think about America being this way. Such events are complex. There are all sorts of reasons for the fall of Rome, but certainly one of them is decay from within. I read a wonderful line. It said, luxury is as dangerous as war. Luxury is as dangerous as war. In the words of the Apostle Paul, what we need in America is fair balance. Not just abstractly because it seems to be the right thing to do, but because if we are not, we will be just like Rome. I've always felt that government has at least these two purposes. One is to defend the nation from outside threat. The other was to care for the people of the nation. In recent years, decades, I say, we've done pretty well defending America from outside threats. We've defended ourselves from Russia and continue to do so with China, while our own people are defenseless against illness, lacking health care, against poverty, against violence from guns, against decay in our environment. The wealthy get in their yachts and go out and have a good time while the poor live by super sites, super fun sites. Is this what we want to get back to, America? A country in which the wealthy have most of the wealth and continue to get richer? Many of them are in Congress. A community where a sign celebrating Pride Month can be ripped to shreds? A nation in which 1 in 6 children live with food insecurity. Meanwhile, Jeff Bezos is flying into space. Maybe he won't come back. Taking care of people is defending the nation as much as military does. America is back to what? Plutocracy? At least we won't go back again to kakistocracy, which you probably will remember means the rule of the idiots. Do we want to be like Rome? What we need is to reignite the vision of the gospel held by those small Christian communities who loved each other and held things in common and cared for the least of these. We need some things back, like love is back, compassion is back, justice is back, truth and honesty are back, goodness is back, equality is back. I can sign up for those. We need to fight for fair balance in America and in the world. We must imagine a new America. We can start with all people are created equal, and not just men. And we should have a constitutional amendment to change men to people. Not only created equal, but to remain equal is the goal. The purpose is not to throw everyone into the broiling capitalist pot and see who comes out on top. That's monopoly. The goal is to keep everyone as equal as possible because that's the way of God, and also it will be the only way that we can survive. President Biden often talked in his campaign about the soul of America, so that begs the question, what is the soul of America? I'm not sure I want America back again. Not as it was. What I'm hoping for is that the pandemic will shock us into seeing differently to become more inclusive, accepting, embracing of diversity, more caring for our children and the poor, less selfish and narcissistic, more generous and sacrificing, less closed-hearted, less luxury, more medication for the poor, equality and sharing, less defensiveness and personal pride, and more of this kind of pride. Weeks ago, I spoke about two traditions in the Old Testament, the monarchical and the prophetic, and we've chosen the kings. The soul of America went to the casino. The soul of America has been capitalized and Disneyfied so that the measure of worth is always money. As Kurt Cobain prophetically said, Here we are, now entertain us. Our leaders care more about their seats than they do the common good, and I give seats two meanings there. Shame is diminished, we live with truth decay. Approaching all of this complexity, we need to be thinking deeply about it and not just say things like America is back and not wonder what America is and what we want it to be. Checking our own biases always. And seeing the wider picture. When you look at the wider picture, there are two things that are more threatening to democracy than anything else, and the first one is climate change, because climate change changes everything. Immediately, it's voting rights, but then if you have heat like this, how many people are going to the polls? And if they're at the polls, they can't even get water from anybody because of some stupid law. What are people thinking? Climate change changes everything. The other issue that threatens democracy is, as I've said, distribution of wealth. It's biblical economics. In our text, Paul quotes Exodus, the story of the manna in the wilderness, which I know most of you know well. The manna appeared in the morning, and it says, gather as much of it as each of you needs, and Omar to each person, according to that person, that the number of persons, all providing for those in their own tents. The Israelites did so. They gathered more, some less. But when they measured it with the omer, those who gathered much had nothing over, and those who gathered little had no shortage. They gathered as much as each of them needed. And Moses said, let no one leave any of it over until morning, because it would spoil. And there, the meaning is, don't hoard. Since the beginning, the idea of fair balance has been a biblical ideal. I don't understand how so many in the Christian world don't see it. It's biblical economics, and don't let anybody tell you it's socialism. See, that's what we need to do. When somebody says, that's socialism, say, no, this is biblical economics. Let me show you. America's back. Back to what? A few days ago, Aaron told me that he and his friends believe that monopoly was originally created by socialists who thought that if we played the game, we would understand how threatening and dangerous capitalism is. And we ate it up. Are we still playing monopoly in our lives? If we do, nothing's going to change. We've got to play a new game. Or here's what we can do. We can revise monopoly, okay? Park Place, Boardwalk, 90% tax. Capital gains tax will raise to at least 35%. Utilities are upgraded. Railroads are too old. We need an infrastructure bill. Pass and go, now everybody gets $500. Forget that little $200 or $100, whatever it was. The wealth tax is added. The luxury tax, which is an actual square on the board, is increased, along with jail having the option of community service. And we have some added squares that are part of life that we need to have as a part of life. Food bank, shelters, cocoon house, museums, rehab facilities, and halfway houses. And community chest funds are all in the community itself. We've got to change the game. Make new games based upon Paul's words. It is a question of fair balance between your present abundance and their need. This is the wisdom of God.